Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I have a really exciting video for you today. I am floored by how this came out. I'm using the Trinity Stamps Stamptember Exclusive with Simon Says Stamp, and we are going to use acrylic markers on acetate. And I had never done this before and it turns out better than I could have even imagined. If you don't have this set, you could try this with any stamp set you already have. If you're new to Stamptember, these sets are a limited edition release and they sell out very quickly. So if you do like the stamp set and are interested in it, I would grab it quickly. But otherwise, let's just paint some things and have some fun. So I am using StazOn ink. It's a solvent-based ink, and I am stamping onto a full panel shaker cover, right? So this will make a full A2 size card, or 4 by 5 1/4, and then we'll put it on an A2. I will say my StazOn ink is pretty dry. I've had it for, I don't know, 10 years, 15, a long time, and it needs to be re-inked and I couldn't find the re-inker, but this is gonna work just fine. We stamped onto the front of that shaker panel, and then these are Sharpie acrylic paint pens. We're actually gonna use 2 different brands today and talk about the differences and what I like and what I don't like and what I learned along the way. I have flipped this over. So I am working on the back of that shaker cover, the inside of it. And I am just painting away. If I had to do this with a paintbrush, get out of town. There's no way. I don't have the control, but I do with a marker or a pen. What I love too is that because we're on the back, I don't have to worry about staying inside all of the lines. I just have to stay inside of the largest lines. There are garland pieces on here, so I'm trying not to color into the garland, and then I'm staying inside of the shape of the tree, but that's it. But here's what I learned. You want to try to connect the paint while it's still wet. In section 3, the third one down, I tried to outline the whole thing and then have this really satisfying moment where I filled in the middle, but some of the paint had started to dry, and you can actually start picking up the dried paint with the wet brush if you do that. So instead, give yourself a manageable area, outline while the paint is still wet, connect through the middle. It is so satisfying. I've been doing a lot of alcohol marker coloring lately, and it's fun, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm really enjoying it. But this, I didn't have to shade anything. It was like being a kid again, only without all the worry. Even as a kid, I didn't like the lines that my crayons left, right? I was very deliberate in making sure all the lines went the same direction. No problems here. For the garland, I wanted pink, and the pink in the Sharpie set is too dark. I have a second set. It's actually the first set I got. They are Ohuhu acrylic markers. In the Sharpie set, I got 12 brush tip markers for about $20. There's also a bullet tip set that runs more like 15 or 16. And then for the Ohuhus, I got a set of 30 for about 25. And they have 2 tips. There's a very round sort of bullet tip and a fine point tip. I'm using the fine point tip right now, and I was struggling to get enough coverage with the paint. I did not have that issue with the Sharpie, but part of it is that the Sharpies, you don't have to prime them when you get them. And so this pink I had never used before. And so maybe I just didn't prime it enough to start with. So I am priming it off to the side just to get a little more paint out. And that's working beautifully. And I will use a couple of techniques along the way to do this when I'm using that fine point tip. I'm being really careful right now to stay inside the garland, but you guys, I didn't have to do that. It's going to occur to me later that this is paint and you're not going to see the pink through the green. And so as I start moving through some of these bottom pieces, we're just going to paint right on top of things and it works just fine. I'm using one of the Sharpie markers for this little bit at the bottom of the tree skirt. It is a lighter shade of teal. There are 2 teals in this set. I quite like that. The tree is actually more teal than green. The true green is kind of light, and I wanted this to be more vibrant. Then I'm going to use a white and silver for the rest of the tree skirt and a little bit of gold. So the white on both sets is not quite as opaque as I would like, or at least not as opaque as I'd like on acetate. It's all a little thinner on acetate, right? Because it sort of moves around, it's liquid, and you're sometimes moving the paint off the acetate as much as you're laying it down on top of it. For my metallics, there are 9 metallic markers in the Ohuhu set. And here I'm coming in with that big bullet tip just to lay down some paint. And then I'm using the fine tip to kind of move it around and get it closer to some of those corners than I could with that larger tip. You probably could skip this step, but I wasn't sure. I don't want my shaker pieces to scratch off any of that paint, so I'm just using my Barely Art glue and a paintbrush, and I went all over the back where I had painted on this panel. But friends, I tried it on a separate panel and I didn't feel like the shaker bits were really doing any damage, especially given like how we tend to set cards on display. It's not like we're shaking them for days. So, was it worth it? Maybe. It was an experiment, and next time I think I'll skip that step. There are a handful of small images in this set, and so I'm coming in with the same pink from the garland and then silver and this light blue to color them all in. I like to pick a trio of colors if I can and just carry those through all of the images. The silver is going to get interesting. I stamped these in Memento, and then I'm going to stamp again on top of that paint when it dries to try to crisp up the lines, because even with the fine tip, it is sometimes hard to stay really inside of the lines, or maybe maybe I was just in a hurry. And so I'm coming back in at the end with my Gina K Obsidian black ink, and I'm going to stamp over the top of everything. The paint was dry. This works really well on the matte colors, both from Sharpie and Ohuhu. I've tried it both ways, but it doesn't work very well with the metallics like this silver. You can kind of see that metallic through it. So I came back in with my StazOn to try to crisp up some of those lines. That worked better, though still not quite as well as I might have hoped. If I was going to do that again, I might wait until it was really, really, really dry and then use my VersaFine ink and heat emboss on top of that black. I have a panel that is 4 by 5 1/4 that is going to be the background for my card. And I'm going to stamp Merry Christmas where one of those white lines is. So I just taped it inside the shaker panel. I tested this on a scrap of acetate on top, like we're well into this card. And I didn't want to mess it up. So I know that it's straight. I know that it looks good. And I will use my StazOn ink and stamp that one more time. I would have loved to stamp this in gold StazOn. I have probably 10 StazOn pads in different colors, but not gold. I don't know what happened. So then I have a few more details to add, and I'm feeling brave. I am like channeling my inner Carrie Rhodes. If you don't know Carrie, she's on the Trinity team with me, and she will regularly like free range stamp on cards that are basically done. And I kind of feel like that's what we're doing here, but I don't know how else I would do this effectively. There are little ornaments in that set, and I'm going to stamp 5 of them onto my tree. This second one doesn't go real well. The bottom doesn't get stamped at all because StazOn can be a little bit tricky on acetate or anything that's slick. It's like the stamp wants to hydroplane a little bit and it's wiggling around while you have that very thin layer of wet ink between the stamp and the acetate. So I just got it right in front of me and stamped over the top of it. It's not perfect, but we're going to color it in with a paint pen. You can see as you're looking through these ornaments, right, you can see the tree. And so honestly, all of this came about because I was trying to decide how I wanted to go about adding my ornaments. I don't have the coordinating dies for this set. Wish I did, but I don't. I haven't seen the dies, but I assume there are dies for the ornaments. So you could stamp them, and then there's also a stamp that will color it in for you and then cut them out with the die and place them on the tree. And that would be so much fun. I would love to give my kids a card that has the tree and then they can place the ornaments on it, maybe with some like removable glue dots, and they can move them around a whole bunch. But in the meantime, I was trying to come up with a way to add the ornaments that wouldn't require me to fussy cut tiny pieces. I am coloring these in, and the sort of classic ornament shape that has the pointy bottom, there is actually a line in the middle, like a swoopy line, and I am going to color that in 2 colors. It means there are real tight corners, so I'm using my little pokey tool, my pickup stick from Trinity, to move that wet paint into some of those narrower areas. You can also go in with a fine liner when you're done and color in any places where you went too far over the lines. I was definitely more careful there than I was, say, while I was painting on the back. So here is my shaker panel, and I am folding all of those flaps in before I start removing this double-sided tape. I'm using a 1/2 inch double-sided tape here. These flaps are sort of narrow, and I want to make sure there's a lot of adhesive and it's going to be stuck down really well. I should have pulled off 3 sides at the same time, but I wasn't thinking about it. So I stuck down my first side before I went to stick down the opposite side. It would have worked better if I had tried to center the panel in the middle there and then stuck down the 2 opposing sides, but next time. This worked fine. It's great, but it would have been a little easier. I left the top open, and I am adding some little gold shaker bits. They're from Trinity Stamps. They're called gold coins. It's exactly what it looks like. There's a bunch of different sizes, and I like that they've got some weight to them and they shake really beautifully. It also helps that they're pretty flat. So when I go to close this up, I do like to distribute them a little bit so I don't end up with a huge hump somewhere. But then I can lay this fairly flat against my table while I'm adding that last flap onto the adhesive. Then I will go over all the flaps one more time with my finger just to make sure everything is really secure. I have a sheet of gold foil cardstock. This is like my good gold foil. That's how I'm feeling about this card. It's from the Treasured Cardstock collection from Spellbinders. You get 15 sheets in 5 different finishes. I hoard this stuff. It's actually very reasonably priced, but you see me cutting the middle out. Like nothing's going to waste in this craft room. Then I added more double-sided tape right over top of the flaps, a little bit in the middle, and then I'm adding some wet glue just to give me a little float time. But then as soon as I press down, that double-sided adhesive will grab and it is not going anywhere. I know because I tried to move it at one point and it was like, nope, she's on there. So the gold panel is a full A2, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the shaker is a little bit smaller. The stripe panel is 4 by 5 1/4, but by the time the plastic shaker is on there, it's even a little bigger still. I have one more piece to add, or set of pieces, and it's the presents that we colored. I fussy cut these out because, I don't know, I couldn't be bothered to walk the 3 steps to my scan and cut. Next time. Next time. I just was so confident because some of these are really easy to cut out. That present is a square and the other 2 have minimal fussy details. Cutting out the train. That one was a little more challenging, but again, there are dies available if you prefer that. I am adding a little piece of double-sided tape on the back, and for the larger pieces, I added glue as well, but for the train, I'm not going to. I was worried about the glue oozing out as I'm about to finish this card. But my friends, that is it. Our card is all finished. I am absolutely in love with the acrylic markers on acetate, and that tree. Ugh. My friends, I hope this inspires you to create something fun and to challenge yourself to try a new technique. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.